What's up, Chaos Crew? I'm Jimmy Chaos, and today we're going to look at the red cards from Streets of New Capenna. So far, we've looked at all the other monocolor cards as well, so make sure you've checked out those videos, and let's get into it. Alright, first up here we have Antagonize. It's 1 and a red for an instant. Target creature gets +4/+3 until end of turn. Yeah, this kind of effect usually isn't amazing. Like, if you're desperate for removal, it kind of plays a similar role. But in terms of just attacking, it can be a little bit underwhelming at times, especially because if you don't have a good attack anyways, or if you just don't have enough creatures or any creatures. So yeah, overall, I'd say this is probably average. It'd be playable unless you have a lot of good removal. Then you'd want to play good removal over this, I would say. Or maybe if you're going after the double striking raccoon we saw in the green cards, this might actually go up in value a bit there too. So in the right deck, it's okay, but if you have better removal, I would play that over this. All right, Arcane Bombardment, 4 and 2 red for an enchantment. It's a mythic. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, exile an instant or sorcery card at random from your graveyard. Then copy each card exiled with Arcane Bombardment. You may cast any number of copies without paying their mana costs. Okay, so in limited, you're not going to have very many instants or sorceries, generally speaking, not enough to really make this much of a payoff. So this is really meant for commander players, I would say. In terms of limited, yeah, I wouldn't run this. You're going to get very little value. Your instants and sorceries are generally just average or below anyways. So 6 mana for this, which really does not impact the board right away, is definitely not where you want to be. But yeah, commander players are going to have a lot of fun doing some stuff with this. All right, big score. 3 and a red for an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card. Draw 2 and create 2 treasure tokens. Okay, so this is the exact same effect as Unexpected Windfall, except this card is 1 red versus Unexpected Windfall, which is double red and 2 generic. So it's almost like a reprint, but not quite. And yeah, the fact that it's single red will make it a lot easier to cast in this format, since this format is more multicolor centric with all the 3-color cards and whatnot. So this makes this a lot more playable, which is good. And red has a fair bit of synergy with treasure. So in the right deck, this is going to be really powerful. In the wrong deck, it's still not bad. Like 4 mana, draw 2 cards and get 2 mana for a future turn. Well, you would discard, say, a land. Like this card's playable in pretty much any deck that's running red, I would say. All right, call in a professional. 2 and a red for an instant. Players can't gain life this turn. Damage can't be prevented this turn. Call in a professional, deals 3 damage to any target. And they have a note here that shield counters can't prevent the damage either, as they're removed. So that's good to keep in mind for limited. This is very similar to Skullcrack, except Skullcrack can only hit players, it can't hit any target, so this is a little bit more widely targetable. Other than that, the effects basically are the exact same, but this is 3 mana versus 2 mana, so it's a bit overcosted, but in terms of limited, this would be a great card. This is a great piece of interaction. It gets around the shield counters, which we've seen lots of those in this format, and some of those cards look like they will see a lot of play, so having a way around it is great. So yeah, this you would play multiple copies for sure in limited. In constructed, it's too slow. We generally don't see Lightning Strike see much play, and this is more expensive for the same amount of damage. So definitely a limited, great piece of interaction for limited, not so much for constructed. All right, Daring Escape. For 1 red, it's an instant. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn, scry 1. Yeah, these kind of effects can be okay in certain situations, but for the most part, you're going to be 2-for-1ing yourself to try and well, I guess if you have first strike, you're not going to 2-for-1 yourself. No, it'd just be this card first, something on the board. But the situations where that works out are not always the most common, and a scry effect on top of this isn't amazing. It's okay. Like this is a pretty average effect. We've seen many a time before, and it was never really great in those formats, so I don't expect it to be great here either. Devilish Valet, 2 and a red for a Devil Warrior rare 1/3. Has trample and haste. All right. It has alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under control, double Devilish Valet's power until end of turn. Okay, so this is really interesting. If you can get out So let's say you only play one creature, it becomes a 2/3. If you play two creatures, it becomes a 4/3. And at that point, it's really swinging. So realistically, in limited, it's going to be hard to get two creatures a turn to consistently trigger him as a 4/3. So it's going to be okay. It's not going to be amazing. Yeah, the power just starts kind of low. I guess if you play Antagonize, then he becomes 10 damage out of nowhere if you only play a single creature as well. So if you have enough pump spells, you could go kind of focused around him. But again, focusing around one creature in limited is a bit risky. So I think he looks like he could be really strong, but I think he's going to work out to be kind of average. In terms of like a constructed deck, though, you play him with like Krenko or some kind of token generating goblin, all of a sudden this guy can swing for a lot. So I think we could see this played in some kind of in conjunction with goblins in some kind of constructed deck. But in terms of limited, I think it's just going to be an average card just because it's not going to be easy to trigger its ability very consistently. All right, Exhibition Magician. 2 and a red for a human wizard, 2/1. And when it enters the battlefield, choose one. Create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token or create a treasure token. Yeah, that's an overrate 2/1 with two kind of effects. Like creating the treasure, I don't think that's going to be very useful unless you really are in a treasure payoff deck, which red does have a few treasure payoffs. But creating the token, you get 3/2 worth of stats on 2 bodies for 3 mana. That's not great. That's slightly below average, I would say. So yeah, if you really need the treasures or you're just desperate for a 3-drop, you'd play this, but otherwise there's probably going to be better 3-drops that you would want to play over it. Glittering Stockpile. 2 and a red for an artifact treasure. Tap it, add a red, put a stash counter on Glittering Stockpile. Okay. Tap it and sacrifice it, add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of stash counters on Glittering Stockpile. Well, that's kind of cool. So it adds a mana now and it adds a mana later. So that's really interesting. Now, what are you going to do with this mana is the real question. And I'm not sure in limited there's that much that you're going to be able to do with it. If you're going really heavy on colors, it'll help fix you. So if you're desperate for some fixing, you could go with that and use it after only maybe getting 1 or 2 counters on it and not need a lot of mana out of it. It's a treasure as well itself, which is neat. So again, if you're in a treasure payoff deck, it's a spell that actually then gives you a treasure as well. So it's an interesting card. I think it's probably going to be kind of average. I don't think it's going to be great in a lot of decks, but some decks it's going to be really powerful in, but there'd be very odd decks that you probably wouldn't end up playing anyways. All right, Gold Hound, a 1 mana, 1 red, 1/1 treasure dog. All right, a treasure dog. Aren't all dogs a treasure? Come on, Wizards. No, that's an awesome combination of creature types. Anyways, first strike, menace, tap it, sack it, add 1 mana of any color. Okay, so for a 1 mana 1/1, you get a lot of effects without ignoring the sacrifice ability. You get menace and first strike, and it's a treasure. All for 1 mana. That's great value right there. It's just a 1/1 though, so like it's not doing a lot of damage, but it's going to get in consistently for the first few turns. If you run any pump spells, this then could trade up potentially, so it's interesting. So tap it and sack it and add a mana of any color. Yeah, it's again fixing if you need it, and yeah, okay, that's the treasure effect. That's why that's on there too. So this is a neat card. I think it's slightly above average, but again, do you need a 1-drop in your deck is the real question as to whether or not you would play this card. Horde Hauler, 3 and a red for an artifact vehicle. It's a rare, 5/5. Trample. Whenever Horde Hauler deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token for each artifact they control. Through 3. Okay, so in terms of limited, the trigger when it deals combat damage to a player, you're probably most of the time going to get nothing off that. But a 5/5 trample for 4 mana with crew 3, that's pretty good. That alone would be playable. A 5/5 is big enough to swing consistently and not worry about dying. And crew 3 is a very reasonable crew cost. And if they happen to have an artifact, you're going to get some treasures. And if they don't, well, hey, he's got some damage in. And it's also a great blocker. A 5/5 is a very solid blocker in limited as well. In terms of constructed, maybe in Commander, because there's a lot more artifacts. In terms of standard, though, I don't think so. Maybe in sideboards, if there is like an artifact deck in the meta and getting these treasures actually matter, but I don't think it's going to have much of an impact in standard. Involuntary employment. 3 and a red for sorcery. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. Create a treasure token. Okay, so it's another act of treason effect that we perennially see in these limited environments. The last limit environment was a 5-cost one, so it's good to see it back down to 4 because 5 mana was just way too much. 4 mana is okay, but you do get the treasure, so you kind of get a refund on some of that mana. Again, if you're in a treasure-centric deck, I would definitely strongly consider this. In any red deck, maybe. Like, I've never been fond of the act of treason effects because it's like one-time effect. They get their creature back, so it's not always that impactful, but sometimes you can steal games with these. So if you're pro act of treason, this is definitely a card you would be happy to play. Jackhammer, 1 and a red for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, and it has equipped 2. Yeah, this just doesn't do enough. Like, we've seen axes and stuff in other environments like this, and they were never that strong there, so this one's not going to really be any different. It's neat that it's a jackhammer, though, and the art's kind of cool. But yeah, it's like average. It's just an average card that you probably aren't going to play. Jax is the Troublemaker. 3 and a red for a legendary creature, human warrior, 2/3. It's rare. Pay a red and tap it, discard a card. Create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control. It gains haste, and when this creature dies, draw a card. Sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step. Activate only as a sorcery. And this creature has Blitz for 1 and a red. Okay, so that's basically Kiki Jiki's effect, but then you also have a card draw stapled onto it. So that's pretty good. That's really strong. It's a sorcery speed, not instant, so it's not quite same level, and you have to discard a card. But you do get that card refunded through the card draw. So yeah, this is an absolute bomb in limited, and I would imagine we would see lots of commander players playing this. I don't know if you'd play it as your actual commander, possibly. But yeah, this in standard, this might actually see some play too if there's anything broken that can be done with the copying of a creature effect, or if there's some kind of good value deck that this could be a part of. But yeah, this card's very strong. All right. Light 'em up. 1 and a red for sorcery with casualty 2. Light 'em up deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Okay, so it's an overcosted shock that can't hit the player as a sorcery speed, but you can sacrifice a creature to copy it. Yeah, it's okay. I would say it's average. You'd play no more than 1 copy. The sacrificing of a creature to deal 2 extra damage is kind of weak. So you have to really be in the right deck where you want to sacrifice a creature, or that you can make lots of, I guess tokens are probably not going to be big enough anyway, so that wouldn't help. Yeah, so again, just average. It's overcosted for what it does, and sacrificing a creature for 2 more damage, yeah, that seems a bit weak there. Mayhem Patrol, 1 and a red for a 1/2 Devil Warrior, has Menace. When Mayhem Patrol attacks, target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn, and it blitzes for 1 and a red. Okay, so this is interesting. So it's basically a Menace Bear, because you could give itself the +1/+0 in the worst case scenario, and it's a 2/2. And late game, when that's no longer sufficient to really impact the board, you can just blitz this out and basically deal 2 damage and cycle this card. So yeah, this is nice. Nice little 2-drop here. Fits well into the curve, and then late game you can cycle it. So I would say this is above average. This is actually looks quite interesting to try out and play. And I really like the flaming dog in the artwork. That's pretty cool looking. Plasma Jockey, 3 and a red for a Viashino Warrior, and it's a 3/1. All right, so it's overrate already. So whenever Plasma Jockey attacks, target creature an opponent controls can't block this turn. Okay, so we've, yeah, like the on-crop crasher type effect we've seen many times. It blitzes for 2 and a red. Okay, so it's a bit expensive for what it does, but when you play it as a blitz, it can just win you the game. If you take out their only blocker, maybe you get in for the final points of damage, and this itself would get in for 3 as well. So I'd say it's okay because it's 4 mana normally, which is way overcosted. It has to survive. It's only a 3/1. So yeah, I'd say this card is probably just average, maybe in the right deck, slightly above average if you're playing a very aggressive deck. And this can just like finish them off, basically. So yeah, it's okay. In terms of constructed, not going to see any play, I don't think. I don't think it's going to be as powerful as the on-crop crasher was, because that stuck around and could use its ability multiple times. This is kind of designed to be a one-time effect on that. So Professional Face Breaker, 2 and a red for a human warrior with a 2/3. It has menace, so it's also a rare. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. Sacrifice a treasure, exile top card in your library. You may play the card this turn. Okay, so a 3 mana 2/3 with menace is decent rate, and it has an upside of giving us treasure tokens, and then it turns those tokens into card draws effectively. Yeah, this is great. This is quite a good, powerful treasure payoff as well. So now every red card we've seen and all the ones that will see that have treasure token generation have gone up, are way up in value if you happen to get this in your pool. Being able to draw a card from just sacrificing a treasure is really strong. And I expect that we'll see this in Commander like crazy, especially in any deck that's running Dockside Extortionist, because this is just something great to do with all those treasures you grab. And this may see standard play if there's some kind of treasure-based deck that comes to fruition. But yeah, in limited, this could be a bomb if you have enough treasure generation. Yeah, very cool card. All right, Pugnacious Pugilist, 3 and 2 red for an ogre warrior, 4/4. When Pugnacious Pugilist attacks, create a tapped and attacking 1/1 red devil creature token with, when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. And it blitzes for 3 and a red. Okay, so 5 mana 4/4 is a bit below rate, but when it attacks, it makes another body. So that's pretty cool. And that body will stick around if it doesn't get killed in combat. And if you play this for Blitz, it's a good surprise attacker. It could come down and bring 5 damage to the board, which could turn combat around for you, or could just end up winning you the game on the spot. So you would prefer to play this for the normal cost. It sticks around for a few turns to get more tokens, if it will on the board, obviously. And the Blitz to really kind of just come out of nowhere with 5 extra damage and win the game. So overall, I'd say, yeah, this is really strong, above average. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun to play in this format. All right, Pyro Sledge Arsonist, 2 and a red for a Vaishano Shaman. It's a 2/2, so it's a bit above rate. So 1 and tap it. Pyro Sledge Arsonist deals X damage to any target where X is the number of permanents you've sacrificed this turn. Okay, so this is basically another payoff for your treasures, because you can just sacrifice them for mana, and then this can do damage to something. Yeah, if you're in a treasure deck, this looks really strong. It's just another way to use those treasures and get some good removal, or just burn your opponent out with them. So I'd say, yeah, in a treasure deck, this is awesome. In any other deck, though, if you're more tempo-based, not generating a lot of treasures, then this is just nothing. It's just a 3 mana 2/2, and that's pretty bad, because there's no other way to really sacrifice permanents. This, I don't think, would see any kind of constructive play, just because the cost to activate the ability, and it's just not powerful enough for most formats. So definitely, this is really only for a treasure-based limited deck. All right, Ready to Rumble, 4 and a red for a sorcery. Choose one. Ready to Rumble deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Destroy target artifact. That's a bit expensive for what it does, but if you need some top-end removal or just some more removal in general, this would be justifiable to play. But if you have a lot of removal and interaction already, then this you probably don't need. If you're playing traditional, keep it on the sideboard for when the artifact part matters and you can bring it in, or if they have a big creature you need to remove. But overall, this is, yeah, slightly below average, I would say. Nothing too exciting. Riveteers Initiate, 1 and a red for a 2/2, and it's a Viashano citizen, and for 1 and either a black or a green, it gains Death Touch. Okay, so this is the red version of this cycle, and yeah, it's a bear with an upside. If you're in those color pairs, you would absolutely play this. The Death Touch is a nice effect. It can help it trade up, and it just deters attacks as well. If you're not in one of the color pairs this needs, then it's just a bear, and you wouldn't play it because there'd be something better for your 2-drop slot, I'm sure. But if you're in those color pairs, absolutely you would want to play this. All right, Riveteers Requisitioner. 1 and a red for a Viashano Rogue. It's a 3/1, so it's on rate. And when it dies, it creates a treasure token, and it blitzes for 2 and a red. Okay, so it could be a surprise 3 damage attacker out of nowhere. And then when it dies, you get a card and a mana. So that's pretty good. And if it comes down on curve, it's a 2-mana 3/1, which is on rate, and it's very aggressive. So if you're in a nice aggressive deck or a Treasures Matters deck, this is a great card to have. Yeah, I'd say it's slightly above average. Rob the Archives, 1 and a red for sorcery. Casualty 1, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. Okay, so another kind of red exile-based card draw spell. The casualty 1's not too bad. There's lots of 1-drop creatures that you can sacrifice. Or sorry, there's not lots of 1-drop creatures. Any creature with 1 power you can sacrifice. So if you're in a deck that generates a bunch of the tokens, the citizen tokens, this could be sacrificed. But if you don't get the casualty trigger, then it's 2 mana, draw a card essentially, which is pretty bad. Yeah, so this would only be okay in a deck. Yeah, so if you get the casualty, it's 2 mana, draw 2 cards, and you can't keep those cards. Right? No, sorry, I am totally misreading this card. Let's try this one again. Oy. All right, 1 sec. All right, exile top 2 cards. Okay, so it's 2 mana, draw 2, or 2 mana, sacrifice a creature, draw 4. Okay, yeah, I think this is okay. It's the casualty seems kind of like, do you really need to see 4 cards or not? It depends on the situation, I guess. Late game, this is really what you want to draw late game, so you can kind of play multiple of the spells. But yeah, overall, I'd say this is an average card. You would probably play 1 copy of this and not hope to draw it later in the game. Sizzling Soloist, 3 and a red for a 3/2 human citizen. Alliance, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, target creature an opponent controls can't block this turn. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, that creature attacks during its controller's next combat phase if able. Alright, so can't block when something enters the battlefield, and if it's the second time, that creature now has to attack back. Yeah, anything that prevents your opponent from blocking is usually pretty strong and limited. It's a 4 mana 3/2, which is below rate, but I think the ability pay is worth the extra cost. And even if you ignore the part for the second time, this card is pretty good. The making them attack back, you have to be careful because there may be situations where that attack back is going to be problematic for you, and you want to make sure you don't trigger this twice because it is a forced trigger, so you can't choose not to use it. Yeah, overall, I'd say this is slightly above average card. Yeah, seems pretty fun. All right, Sticky Fingers. 1 red for an enchantment aura. Enchanted creature. Enchanted creature has menace, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. When enchanted creature dies, draw a card. Okay, 1 mana to get menace, and it creates mana when it deals combat damage, and when it finally dies, it gets you a card back. Yeah, this is actually an aura that doesn't seem too bad. Normally, these kind of auras we see in Limited are a little bit not so great, like a Kai Warpaint from the previous set. It was like 1 mana, they get +2/+1. Wasn't great. But this set being only 1 mana, it replaces itself when the creature dies, and it's going to generate some mana and help you get in for some damage early on. Yeah, this card actually seems like a playable aura for once for red, which is pretty cool. Yeah. All right, Strangle. 1 red for sorcery. Strangle deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Yeah, it's not quite lightning bolt. It's sorcery speed, it doesn't hit players, but yeah, this is great interaction. You would definitely run multiple copies of this. 1 mana. It's sorcery speed, so you can't really use it as a trick or anything, but just straight up 1 mana, 3 damage is a great effect for limited. I would play multiple copies of this, absolutely. Alright, Structural Assault. 3 and 2 red for a sorcery, it's rare. Destroy all artifacts, then Structural Assault deals damage to each creature equal to the number of artifacts that were put into graveyards from the battlefield this turn. Okay, limited is not going to have enough artifacts for this card really to do anything. So this is not a limited playable card. Don't play this. Keep it in your sideboard if you're playing traditional. And yeah, if there happens to be an artifact deck, then cool, bring it in. You can wipe all your opponent's treasure tokens away or something. But most of the time, this is going to do absolutely nothing and stay in your hand for the whole game. In terms of other formats, though, Commander players are going to be very happy. This is another Wrath for red, and also Wrath's artifacts and probably creatures too. So this card, yeah, will absolutely see a ton of Commander play. Standard, if there's an artifact deck in Standard, sure, but otherwise, no, I wouldn't see any play in Standard. Alright, Torch Breath. X and a red for an instant. This spell costs 2 less to cast if it targets a blue permanent. This spell can't be countered, and Torch Breath deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker. Okay, so basically, against a blue permanent, you'd get 2 extra damage, is essentially how that -2 cost effect works. So if you play this for 1 red, on a blue permanent, it deals 2 damage. So that's basically shock. And this also can't be countered. Not that we saw too many counters in this format, so there were a couple disdainful strokes. So anyway, so yeah, against blue, this is absolutely great. Against other colors, this is also great. It's wide open removal for creatures or planeswalkers. Just pump all your mana into it if you need to, and they can't stop it. So yeah, this is absolutely some great interaction, and you would play multiple copies of this for sure. Unlucky Witness. 1 red for a 1/1. When Unlucky Witness dies, exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until your next end step, you may play one of those cards. Okay, so another exile-based card draw effect for red. We've seen, what, 3 of those now this time around? So they're really pushing heavy, and this would be really interesting if you sacrificed it to the casualty effect of the, what was it called? Rob the Archives. You would be getting 6 cards off the top of your deck and being able to play 5 of them. So that would be a ton of card draw, but you would need a lot of mana to really make that a good play to use all those cards. So yeah, this is playable. It helps you draw cards. Now, if it dies on their turn as well, the way it's worded, it's to your next end step. So you still get those cards on your turn, so there's no risk of losing anything. So yeah, I would absolutely play this. Sacrifices really well to casualty effects. Yeah. So in the right deck, this card's gonna be absolute just powerhouse. It's gonna keep you going, keep you fueled. Yeah. But if you're not playing a deck with a lot of casualty stuff, it's still not bad. It blocks and then gets you 2 cards the following turn. So overall, yeah, this is above average, I would say. Urabrask Heretic Praetor. 3 and 2 red for a legendary Frection Praetor. It's a mythic. It's a 4/4. And it is crazy, but it's a Praetor. They're always crazy. Alright, so it has haste. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile top card of your library. You may play it this turn. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, the next time they would draw a card this turn, instead they exile the top card of their library. They may play it this turn. So, your opponent, let's look at this from your opponent's side. So first, they don't get to draw their card for a turn anymore. They get to exile and play that card. That means they can't retain cards, so they can't gain cards in their hand unless they have a spell already in their hand or get one off the library that lets them draw cards. So that really limits what their hand's going to be in future turns. If they keep hitting cards that they can't cast, you're removing those cards from the game. So you're really messing up their drawing, and that's going to be very problematic for them, and it's going to give you massive card advantage through that. But then also, on your own upkeep, you get to exile card, but you also still draw for your turn. So you're outdrawing them basically 2-1, and they can't retain cards, and you can retain cards. Yeah, this is absolutely insane. This is a massive bomb in limited. You get this on the board, and it doesn't get killed right away. You basically win the game. in terms of constructed play, this could see play if there's some kind of red. It's like a red prison card, so maybe we'll see some play with it. But I don't know if there's enough pieces for mono red prison in standard or historic. Commander players, yeah, commander players like weird cards like this. This will absolutely see play in commander. So yeah, it's a pretty cool card. All right, widespread thieving. 2 and a red for an enchantment, rare, hideaway 5. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, create a treasure token. Then you pay 1 of each color mana. If you do, play the exile card without paying its mana cost. Alright, if you're in a deck that generates a lot of treasures, this is worth playing. It's 3 mana, eventually get a free spell. Well, not really free, you have to pay the 5 mana. Oh, you also have to cast the multicolored spell to even get to be able to pay it. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is going to be tricky, because you have to use a multicolored spell first to start the trigger. If you don't have enough of those in your deck, even if you have enough treasures, you're not going to be able to use this. So you really need to be in a deck that has a lot of multicolored spells. So I think that this might be a bit difficult to pull off in Limited, unless you end up with, I would say, 6 or more multicolored spells, plus lots of ways of generating treasure outside of those multicolored spells. So yeah, it's going to be a tricky card. It'll be really decent in a, like, and the upside, if you do pull off all these hoops you have to jump through, is you get a free spell. Yeah, the more I read this, the less I like it for Limited. It just seems kind of like a trap. The hoops you have to jump through for the payoff are kind of low in Limited. In terms of Commander, though, if you're playing 5-color Commander, yeah, this could be really insane, because you're going to get the 5 colors easily, you're going to have lots of multicolored spells, and your spells are a lot more powerful. So in terms of Limited, this feels like a trap. Yeah, this feels like a trap card. All right, Witty Roastmaster, 2 and a red for a 3/2, Devil Citizen. As Alliance, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under control, Witty Roastmaster deals 1 damage to each opponent. That effect's pretty nice. It gives you a bit of reach, so you just keep pinging them. So in a board stall, you're at least still adding pressure, still dealing damage to them. Maybe that eventually breaks the stalemate, forces them to attack, and it's not maybe a bad attack for them, and they just have to do it out of desperation. Or you sit there and just slowly ping them away, and then they eventually just die. So yeah, I would say this is definitely playable in pretty much any deck running red. It's like an average card. It's average playable card, I would say. All right, Wrecking Crew. It's a 4 mana and 1 red for a human warrior, 4/5, has reach and trample. All right, yeah, red doesn't have a lot of flyer. Actually, I don't think we saw any flyers in red, so this is a way for red to help deal with flyers. 4/5 is a good body, can swing most of the time, and trample helps that damage get through. So yeah, I'd say this is just an average playable Limited 5-drop. It's good curve topper. Yeah, seems pretty good. All right, and that is where we go back to the beginning, and we have finished all of the red cards. Yeah, so what do we see? We saw your standard fare of kind of interaction spells for red, Strangle, and the 3 mana one, the name I forget, one that's like Skullcrack. Those both look very good and very strong, so you want to definitely make sure you keep an eye out for those. And red is very treasure centric, so yeah, that's pretty neat. If you get a pack one, pick one of the treasure payoffs, there's lots of cards to support it, so we don't have to shy away from those. So yeah, overall, it was pretty interesting type of red we saw. And the praetor, well, that just looks fun. So hopefully we get one of those in one of our drafts. All right, well, thank you for watching. If you've made it this far in the video, please leave me a like and subscribe. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.